home runs, 3 RBIs, takes away probably 2 runs there defensively. That's 5 runs he's involved in. Matt Chapman.
Olsen skies one high and deep to right field toward the corner of Dell. Onto the track near the wall, leaps up and got it. Makes the catch for out number 3. Olsen. On he goes. Which is hit out towards center field. That's smoke. That is going to be into the bushes. A 2-run home run for McCutcheon. And the Phillies take a 2-0 lead.
Here's another 3-2 going again as Soto hits one high in the air, right center field. Brinson near the wall, leaps, and he makes the catch! Lewis Brinson makes an unbelievable catch over the wall in center field.
The Belly Up Fantasy Live baseball show. Of course, I am your host, Kevin, and after a 1-week absence, we bring in the legend behind the Sports Stove podcast. And I don't know, Vince, if you had any feedback in this, but I just want to let you know I saw the interview that you did with Josh Lindblom, and I really liked it a lot. And of course, he's pitched in the majors, he's pitched in Korea, and so he had a lot of insights, and I really enjoyed that. So just want to let you know that right off the top. And so, Vince, how are you doing tonight?
Well, I'm doing better now, Kev. Thank you. I appreciate you listening and your support always for the show. But, the Josh Lindblom interview, you can find on the Sports Stove podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We talked – the main conversation was Christianity and sports, talking about being in the locker room and all that kind of stuff. But we got some baseball talk into. He was a great guy to talk with, and really hoping he gets another shot back up in the majors. He's down in AAA right now, but he's had a really intriguing career, and it was neat to see the things he talked about Korea a lot and how that was impactful in his career. And I thought that was really great stuff. So thank you, like I said, for this.
Yeah, I really do, because I've been to Korea myself, Vince, and so I really enjoyed what he had to say. And so also coming along with us is the Belly Up baseball department head. Of course, I'm talking about Dan D'Amico. Dan, how are you doing this evening?
I was doing fantastic when Kyle Schwarber ripped a home run off of Max Scherzer, and then now I'm doing less fantastic now that the Mets have taken the lead. I'm very glad.
All right, so
Dan is up and down tonight. We're gonna see the range of emotions.
Yeah, well, unfortunately for Dan, we'll be ganging up on him tonight as well because of what happened on Friday night, which was we had the first no-hitter of the season, and unfortunately for Dan, the Philadelphia Phillies were the team that got no hit by the New York Mets. And so, Vince, do you think this is one of the things? Because remember last year we had no hitters going on like every other week. Is this the portend of what's going to be going on this year?
Not necessarily, I don't think. I balk at the idea of calling it a no-hitter. Yes, the team was no hit. It is a mark on the Phillies for allowing multiple pitchers to pitch where they never got a hit. But it's not something that you, in my opinion, celebrate the pitching aspect of it in this game. If it's one pitcher, it goes all the way through and no hits, then you celebrate the pitcher. If it's a team that can't get a hit off of multiple pitchers, then you bash the team for their failure to get the bat on the ball correctly throughout the entire game. So it's not like they had the every single ace thrown at them throughout that game. They just couldn't get it going. So it happens to the best of them. But I don't celebrate this as the season's first no-hitter. I want an individual pitcher. They go 9 innings and no-hit a team. Then I'll celebrate it. This is just more of a kind of snickering at the Phillies than it is a celebrating the pitchers.
Well, Dan, he put in some pretty big digs on your team right there. So how do you respond to that?
Well, when your team gets no hit, there's really nothing you can do about it. It is what it is, and everyone's gonna have a night like the Phillies did. It's normally not going to be 0 hits. It's normally going to be, getting cut out, having like scattering 3 or 4 hits. It just didn't go for the Phillies. And after a really good sweep of the Rockies in Philadelphia, that was a tough way to start a series against the Mets. But same lineup went out the next day, scored 4 runs. They left it late, but they scored 4 runs and got a win. And that's what's important. They bounced back, and they have a chance to win the series tonight.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, Dan, because I saw that. What's the manager's name of the Phillies?
It's Joe Girardi.
Joe Girardi. Okay, everybody knows Joe Girardi, former catcher. Anyway, he ran out the exact same lineup Saturday as that got no hit on Friday. And the interesting part of that was no one has done that in a century, where they ran out the exact same team, top to bottom, the day after getting no hit. So what is your reaction to that? Is that because he has confidence in his guys, or is that because he doesn't have anybody he feels he can turn to on his bench?
Well, I think it's the confidence. I think he's got confidence. I mean, when you have guys like Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber, Rhys Hoskins, there's a lot of good quality hitters in that lineup. And yeah, Bryce Harper will go for 4 sometimes. So will Rhys Hoskins. Everyone's going to have a bad night. It just so happened that everyone had a bad night on the same night. And you almost feel that there's no way that they can all have a bad night again the next night. Maybe they probably could have, but with such talent in the lineup that got no hit, I think Joe Girardi is confident in his guys, and it turned out that they only scored 4 runs, but that was enough. That was enough yesterday for them to get a win.
Hey, Kevin, Philadelphia fans are used to this, right? So when AI would shoot 8 for 40, they didn't bench him the next game. They sent him back out again. And so 76ers fans, Philadelphia sport fans, they're used to it. And they just say, yeah, let's get him out there again. It'll come back around. It always does.
Okay. So there we got that going on. And so last week, Vince, and I hope you enjoyed your Sunday last week, and we discussed the National League standings. And we didn't get a chance or have time to get into the American League. So that is what we are going to do tonight. And we started with the NL East last week, so I guess we'll go ahead and we'll copy that, and we'll talk about the AL East, which, if you're a New York fan, everything is right in the world because the Yankees are in the top of the division. They've won 9 out of their last 10. And it's going to be a real interesting season, I think, because you got Toronto a game and a half back. Tampa's 4 out. And Boston, we can definitely get into this. They're already 7.5 games out of first place. And so we're going to touch on some of the teams that are surprising so far this season, either surprisingly good or bad. And so my first entry into the surprisingly bad would have to be the Boston Red Sox. So out of that, those 4 teams, what stands out to you, Vince?
It's what we expected to happen last year, right? The Yankees,
that's right. That's right.
They're looking the part. Toronto, young, talented, they're supposed to be good. Tampa and Boston are those kind of middle-tier teams where they can be good, but you're not sure. And then, of course, Baltimore's nothing. So last year, this is what we expected, but Boston had this great year last year. So did Tampa and Toronto wasn't as good as we thought they would be. So this year, at least early on, it looks like they're back to what they were supposed to be. The Yankees, when you have that lineup, you should be winning baseball games. And so they've got the talent. Toronto the same way. Tampa still is a little bit of an oddity. They still not everything matches up. Now, when they get healthy, when their pitching staff gets healthy, now you got to watch out for Tampa because they have a lot of really good pitchers that aren't pitching right now. So maybe they make a big run here as well. Boston, though, they just don't have all the pieces. They've got some pieces, but not all the pieces. So they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do. Are they going to try to blow it up? Are they going to try to acquire some guys mid-season or whatever it may be? But I think what you're seeing right now is New York and Toronto. They're going to battle it out all season. Tampa will be in the conversation, but I expect it to be New York and Toronto all season long. That every time we come on and talk about the AL East, those are the two teams we're talking about.
All right. So, Dan, do you echo what Vince is saying?
I do, and the Yankees have benefited a lot from Anthony Rizzo being just about the best hitter in the league through the first month, and
Yeah.
this probably the best left-handed hitter they've had in a really long time. I'm not sure who their last left-handed hitter that was this good has been, and you knew they had it. They have all the talent in the world, and they disappointed relative to the expectations the last couple of years. And this is finally them playing up to expectations. Toronto, we knew was going to be fantastic. And I agree with Vince. Tampa Bay is one of those teams where 2 weeks could go by and they could be 12-1 in those 2 weeks. And then they're back on top of the AL East. And they never have the most talent, but they always make the most of that talent. So I'm done. I've tried to be low on the Rays the past couple of years. I'm done doing that. I'm done being low on the Rays until they prove that they're not gonna make the most of the talent they have. And for Boston, Chris Sale is a very important piece, and he's not there. But they just look lackluster right now. They're not really hitting on all cylinders, and to be 7.5 games back this early, I know it's very early, but 7.5 games is a lot to make up even with 140 games left.
So my question to both of you guys, Boston Red Sox, playoff team this year, yes or no? Vince?
I'd say no. I say that now that I'm looking at the rest of the standings, so it's definitely a possibility. But I would say no at this point.
Okay. Dan?
I agree. It looks like they're the fourth best team in the division, and they're a heck of a best for being fourth best. They're a heck of a good baseball team, but like I said, I'm not going to be low on the Rays, and they're not better than the Yankees or the Blue Jays. So I'm going to have to agree with Vince and say no.
Well, we're talking about the New York Yankees. There's one guy I want to touch on real quick, and that guy is Joey Gallo. Now, I wrote an article, about players to drop. Joey Gallo goes to the top of my list. The guy is striking out 7,000 times a game, right? He's not walking like he has in the past. He hasn't hit a home run. At least when I last looked, he hadn't hit a home run all season. And so, Vince, if you happen to draft Joey Gallo, and I know that you're smart enough probably not to do that, but if you had him, what do you do with Joey Gallo?
I think you have to drop him. He's on my drop list today of guys that I have here to drop if you got him on your team. It's a long season, and you got to be patient with some guys, but I think Gallo has proved that he's going to have a stretch at some point this season. You'll be like, man, I wish he was on my team, but it's probably not going to be enough to win you a fantasy baseball championship unless he's doing it come playoff time and fantasy playoffs. But at the end of the day, I think at this point you got to let him go and take your shot somewhere else.
Dan, you agree?
I would have agreed with you last week, but in the last 7 days, he's had all of his extra base hits, almost half his hits for the season, and his average in the last 7 days is almost 300. So if you can live with the strikeouts, he does seem to be warming up after a really bad first month, but I think he's better left on the waiver wire, but keep an eye on him because he is a guy that could hit 6 home runs in a week and win you any given week. So if you can time it right and get him at the beginning of a hot streak, he's a guy that could do what Kyle Schwarber did, maybe not to the extent of what Kyle Schwarber did last year when he was hitting a home run every third at bat and every time he was hitting leadoff. But Joey Gallo can do that. It's just you can't live with him hitting 100 over the first 3 weeks. So he shouldn't
No.
be living on your fantasy team, but keep an eye on him because
In
he's
the
a
last
good guy to have.
In the last 7 days, he's played Baltimore and Kansas City.
So there you go. So that's going to
If he has
end.
another stretch like that,
That's right.
Yeah.
then you
That's
pick him up.
So, especially in a league like ours, because it's a points league, and every strikeout is a -1 point. And that's tough to maintain if he's going to strike out 3 times a game. So he's got no place on my fantasy, life. So anyway, so moving upon yet, we move over to the American League Central, who a lot of people were talking about how Minnesota was going to be a team you need to keep your eyes on. Well, guess what? You need to keep your eyes on them. They've won 9 out of their last 10 games. They're in first place over there in the Central. Cleveland is 3 back. The Chicago White Sox are 4.5 back. Now, we don't need to get into Kansas City, and I don't believe we need to get into Detroit either. They've got no business to be discussed. And so I'm going to switch over to you, Dan. Out of those 3 teams, which one of those teams stands out, either good or bad?
Well, it's definitely Minnesota, and Byron Buxton, being an unbelievable player, has a lot to do with it. We'll see if he can stay healthy this year. It was around this time last year where he got hurt and missed a good chunk of time. But they've got a lot of talent, and we knew that because it was always going to be a blip how bad they were last year. But what they've done in the last 10 games is very impressive. But they've got the talent, and if Byron Buxton especially can stay healthy, they'll be there at the end of the year.
It's really impressive considering that Carlos Correa has not gotten it together so far this season. And so, Vince, what do you check in? What is your impression of Minnesota?
I'm impressed with them. What I look at is Chicago.
You got to go to the Chicago White Sox. Right after that.
They've been. Me and Dad actually just talked about this a couple hours ago, recording for Monday's show. But the White Sox 8-13. They're 2-7 on the road, 500 at home. Their run differentials just absolutely horrendous. This is a team that's supposed to be good. And now, granted, they've got injury issues.
They're supposed to run away with the division. So
and they've got injury issues, so you got to kind of account for that. But they're 8-13. That's not good.
They're just
Boston
a half
Red
game
Sox
ahead of Kansas City, who I just completely ignored.
Yeah,
just a half a game,
and they're a half a game behind, or 1 game behind Boston, even though they're not in the same division. So you put it in context. Okay, well they're at least as relatively as good as Boston, but I don't know. It's disappointing to say the least.
Yeah, and Cleveland is in second place, but it must be noted that Minnesota is the only team in that whole division that has a winning record.
Yep.
So I'm not holding out too much hope for Cleveland. I know we got 2 guys that are Cleveland lovers in our league, but and they've only won 3 out of their last 10 games. I'm looking at the standings right here. And so do we expect, Vince, the Chicago White Sox are going to get it together?
It's going to depend on health a little bit, but I would think that they're going to get things rolling at least somewhat. Well, can they catch the Twins? It's a long season again, but the Twins got some talent, and they've got some pitching that's better at this point than what Chicago's doing. So, Chicago should end up being at least second in this division, because the Guardians, they're the team from Cleveland, in case you forgot. They're nothing to write home about. So, I would say the White Sox improve and catch up to 500 and all that kind of stuff. But this is looking like it's the Twins division.
All right, so then we're going to switch over to the AL West, where we've got the Angels at 15-8. They're in first place. You got Seattle is 12-10. They're 2.5 out. Houston, well, we got to sit there and see if we can figure out what's going on with Houston, because they slid the other way wrong. Then they came back and playing the Rangers will get you right in a hurry. but they're not playing the Rangers anymore. So they're at 500 on the season, already 3.5 out. Oakland started off pretty good, even though they've got, AAA players up and down their roster. And that's starting to come off the rails. They won just 3 out of their last 10. And so, we definitely know we can write them off. The Rangers, even though I'm wearing their jersey, I don't know what for, but they're in last. They're 6.5 out. If it wasn't for Baltimore, they'd be the first out of first place of any team in the American League. So, Dan, how do we chop down this division? Angels, real, not real.
Well, with where they're getting their production from, which is just about everywhere in their lineup, it certainly seems like they're for real. They probably don't keep up the pace they're on right now, but Mike Trout's like 4th on the team in OPS right now. The guy I'm sure we're going to talk about later, Taylor Ward, has been unconscious at the plate in just all year, and this is what we've almost been waiting for from the Angels. With all the talent they have, if they can get outs, that they'll keep this up, because the lineup is clearly there. But you're kind of waiting for the Trout injury or Rendon to get hurt, or the rotation to just kind of blow up. But the offense certainly looks real for now. If Mike Trout can stay healthy, they will probably run away with the division.
Well, the impressive part to me is because Shohei Ohtani, except for, when he played the Rangers, which, like as I said earlier, will get you right. He has not really fired up on all cylinders yet. So if he does that, and you mentioned Ward, we could talk about Brandon Marsh, and they've got players that are just all up and down their lineup. Vince, do you see the Angels having staying power?
It's about time for the Angels, right? We've been saying we're supposed to be good.
No question about that.
Two of the best players in the league on the team. Shohei Ohtani has had 18 more plate appearances than the second most plate appearances on the team. Not sure how that shakes out exactly, but he's been at the plate 18 more times than anybody else on the team. So if he gets injured, that's where the Angels fall apart, I think, even more so than the Trout injury that's doomed to come eventually, or Rendon as well. I like this team.
Might not want to say that out loud, because Trout is your guy, isn't he, Vince?
He is. Listen, I like this Angels team. I like what they're doing. We'll talk about him in a second, but Lorenzen, another guy who's, a lot of people looked at it coming into the season and going, well, if he does anything positive, it'll be good for the Angels. Well, he's doing more than just things positive. He's having a really good start to the season. You throw that in with Ohtani and what he's doing, and there's opportunities here for the Angels to be one of the top teams in the AL. They've got the talent on the roster, especially if the pitching rotation can hold its end up. So I think the Angels are here to stay, but of course the biggest caveat that Dan already mentioned is injuries. They're bound to happen at some point in time, but every team deals with injuries. So if they can just have only one injury versus 2 at the same time or something like that, they might be able to survive it. And again, you're looking at this division. Seattle's okay, Houston's okay, Oakland and Texas are bad. So you just got to stay afloat, basically, when those injuries come. So I like them. Yeah, I think they're here to stay. I think we're finally going to get to watch Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout in the playoffs, which would be, I'm sure Major League Baseball would absolutely love to see those guys in the playoffs versus on just video games.
Absolutely. Their mouth is watering just the prospect of that. And so you mentioned them, Vince, the Mariners. They're the team that has not made the playoffs that leads all the world, not just baseball, but the world, from Zimbabwe, all the way to here to Texas, and not making the playoffs. And so can they break that spell this year, Vince?
Well, I'm looking at their roster right now. You look at these names on here and you think, my goodness, it almost looks like an Athletics roster from a couple years ago. Adam Frazier, a guy who Kevin Wilson said, I'll never touch again. Absolutely. Having a great year. Ty France, we all like.
He absolutely is. Absolutely.
Eugenio Suarez, J.P. Crawford is having a really good season so far. So they've got guys that are overperforming, I would say, or at least performing above what we expected they would perform. And when you're doing that, if you can keep it up, great. The problem comes is when you kind of come back to reality, which in baseball it usually happens because it is such a long season. So that's going to kind of be what's going to carry them. Right now, they're playing pretty decent, middle of the line baseball, but they're going to need someone to really step up and be elite, I think, for them to continue. Can they finish second? I think they can. I still like Houston more than I like Seattle, but they were close last year. And if you were close last year and you made improvements this year, and they did, they brought in Robbie Ray. That's a pretty big improvement. So there's no reason why they shouldn't be pushing for, at the very least, a wild card spot this year. I think they can do it. If I was a betting man, I probably wouldn't bet on Seattle. I'd bet against them.
Fair enough. And those out there in fantasy, because I'm glad you're here, just here's a little bit of advice. If you're going to have Julio Rodriguez on your team, don't have him on your bench when he scores 10 points. That's what happened to me today. So I think they've got the guys that can make some moves for them. The thing that worries me, because you got Houston, as I said, they're only at 500, but they're the Astros.
Yeah.
And so at some point you got to figure out, they're going to figure it out. And so if you've got almost every team in the division over in the AL East making the playoffs, something's got to give over. One team from the Central helps. So can 3 teams from the West make the playoffs? Dan?
Well, it really is a numbers game when you're looking at the playoffs. How many teams can they finish above in the wild card? If we're assuming the Angels and the Astros are the favorites to win that division, can Seattle beat one of them to second? And if they can't, they're really resigned to the 3rd spot, because one of the Yankees and the Blue Jays are going to be in the 1st wild card spot if the beginning of the season is any indication. The Rays are probably a good bet to finish at least in the area of one of the wild card spots.
Mm-hmm.
We'd assume the White Sox get back and into playoff contention if they get healthy. So there's a limited amount of spots for a lot of good teams in the American League, and the Mariners were squeezed out of it last year, and it's a matter of can they squeeze in this year. And right now it looks like they just have to do better than the White Sox, and they'll sneak in. I mean, right now it looks like they're in with the 3rd wild card, tied for the 2nd wild card right now, and that's with Houston struggling and with the White Sox struggling. So they're going to have to be better than someone that's better than them on paper. And the Mariners exceeded expectations last year, but now the expectation is to make the playoffs.
Yep.
So the bar has risen, and we'll see with Kelenic and Rodriguez finally got his 1st home run. But can he now continue to hit well and be a good contributor for a team that has playoff aspirations? That's probably the biggest question on if the Mariners will make the playoffs. Can Rodriguez do it?
All right, so that's our look around the American League, and it's obvious there's going to be some great baseball to come down the stretch, because there are a lot of teams already, have identified themselves as being contenders. There's some pretenders in there. So baseball, you have a reason to watch baseball. I know everybody's excited, football draft and all that. Baseball is still here, and it's great. All right, so as this is a fantasy baseball show, we're going to switch over right now to what out there are some players. And I know it starts to talk about pickups and stuff, but I'm going to talk about a player right off the bat, Vince, and it's a guy that you have mentioned many times, and that player is Dansby Swanson of the Atlanta Braves. I'm looking at his stats right now. He's hitting .203, even though he had 2 hits today. But that's against the Rangers. All right, so put that out there. So if you have Dansby Swanson, which almost 75% of people do, leagues do, what do you do with Dansby Swanson?
I mean, if you need a shortstop, then you got him. He's that guy that's always there when you need a shortstop. Like he was in our league, he was drafted 126th overall and then dropped on April 24th, 20 days later. And so right now in our league, if somebody needs a shortstop, Dansby Swanson's one of the guys you're looking at getting. But my thought is always he's always going to be that guy you're looking at getting. I don't want Dansby Swanson on my roster year round. But there's going to come a time this season where I'm going to say, I need a shortstop. Who can I grab? And we talked about this when we were talking about draft rankings and everything, Kevin. He only has one position he can be put in for.
That's right. That really hurts him a lot.
Yeah. If he was second base eligible,
yeah.
he would be on a roster right now. But being just shortstop is what kind of limits fantasy owners from wanting Dansby Swanson on their team, along with some inconsistency issues and things like that as well. I like Dansby Swanson. I think he's a great person, individual, and I think he's a good baseball player. He's just not a good fantasy baseball player. So he's always that guy you're going to look at when the guy gets injured and you need a shortstop for a week. I'm all for Dansby Swanson. But if he's on my roster for a month, then I'm probably not winning very many weeks.
So, Dan, you're sitting here looking over our league. You see Dansby Swanson is up at the top of those players that you could pick up. Are you going to make a move?
Well, right now there are 16 shortstop eligible players on waivers with more fantasy points this season than Dansby Swanson.
There you go. That pretty much lays it bare right there.
And only one of them's on the injured list. So right now there's 15 fantasy shortstops that you can pick up that have been more successful at the plate for fantasy purposes than Dansby Swanson this year. So at this moment, I am not picking up Dansby Swanson. He's okay. He had a great offensive year last year, but he's struggling mightily right now, and it doesn't look like he's going to be able to get out of it anytime soon.
Okay, so I just want to throw his name in there because I'm sure you guys got names and everything, but I wanted to put that out there and see what people thought. And him being just a shortstop in a stack position really hurts him. So, Vince, who do you have at the top of your list to try and pick up this week?
So I'm actually in the process right now of picking somebody up as we speak. I'm trying to figure out who I'm supposed to drop, though. That's the problem.
Okay, who are you picking up, Vince?
Hang on a second. Let me make it official before I tell you. All right, so I'm picking up Ha-Sung Kim, the San Diego shortstop, second and third base.
That's great, Vince, because he's a guy that I definitely wanted to get into. So go ahead. You picked him up. Tell us why you did that.
His points. That's the reason. No, I'm looking at. I mean, I was looking through the things. He said the Dansby Swanson stat about the points, and I already had Kim on my list of pickup possibilities. But then I saw how many points he scored in the last week, especially. I thought, my goodness, why is this guy not on my team? And I got another guy who has negative 14 points in the last week. Franmil Reyes, who I picked up off.
That's a rough gig right there.
Franmil Reyes is now available in our league for the second time this season.
Good reason for that.
I was just waiting for him to click, and it's just not happening. And we look at the Guardians, who are having actually an okay season to start off, to have one of their supposed best batters being that bad, and they're surviving it. That's crazy. But Kim, he has 3 positions he's eligible for.
Yep. I'm looking right at him.
He's scoring points.
All the infield positions besides first. Yeah. He's got all that. And he went hitless today, but that breaks up a 4-game hit streak for him. And because earlier it wasn't, they were saying he may not be in their starting lineup.
Right.
But he is, in fact, in the Padres starting lineup. They've got a good lineup over there. And so that is an outstanding pickup by you, Ben.
Well, it's one of those things. Again, I look at my roster every day. I added Jerkson Profar last week, and he's been, again, very similar kind of player.
I dropped him, and I regret doing that. Just so you know.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. Yeah, but it's one of those things. Again, anytime that you can add somebody with so much position eligibility that's scoring points, I mean, you have to do it. And there's times where, again, we're still early in the season, so I'm a guy that likes to hold on to guys. I'm not going to cut them very early, especially guys that are supposed to be good. Franmil Reyes, for instance, when I picked him up, I thought, hey, I'll just weather the storm. Well, the storm has not stopped. So at some point, you got to cut ties with guys like that and just hold out hope. I've got injuries right now. All my injured list is full. I don't want to drop anybody that's injured. I got Eloy Jimenez, Jose Altuve. I'm not going to drop them. I've been trying to trade Altuve if anybody wants them for somebody I like. But nonetheless, I got pitchers on the injured list. I could cut Steven Strasburg, but I'm wanting to hold on, hoping that he does something special when he comes back. Anyways, Kim, I picked him up. Other guys, though, to move on, I guess. Max Kepler is available in several leagues. He's doing well. And Eric Hosmer.
But I've already got 2 Minnesota players on my team, so I didn't make that move.
They're the twins, not the triplets. You can't have 3 of them. Hosmer, the other one that's had a really great hot start to the season. He's getting picked up in most leagues now. But at this point, ESPN leagues tell us he's still not being picked up as many leagues as he probably should be. But he's probably burned you in the past, which is why people don't want him on their team this year. But Hosmer's having a good start. And if he's available, he's probably worth looking at if you have any kind of hole at first base.
All right. So, Vince. I just talked to you, Dan. Who do you have at the top of your go-get list?
My first guy was Max Kepler. He's been really hot, especially the last.
He's there. He's there. I just saw him. Go get him.
4 home runs. He's been playing really well for a Twins team that is doing very well. And my other guy is a guy that I never thought we'd be talking about on a fantasy baseball show. It's Isaiah Kiner-Falefa.
Yeah.
My article goes out first thing tomorrow, and he's at the top of my go-get list. So just a little preview for you guys.
He's getting on base, and
that's right.
Even at the bottom of the lineup where he normally hits, he scores runs.
That's right.
For a Yankees team that seemingly can't stop scoring runs right now. So when he's getting on base at 333 like he is this year, he's going to be very valuable. So wow. So I'm thinking about it. He's shortstop eligible, which is fantastic. It's unfortunate he's not eligible anywhere else. That would really add to his value. But he's a guy that's hitting well now, and for a team that is allergic to getting shut out in the Yankees, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is a good bet to score a run on any given day.
I'm all with you on him. Like I said, he leads off my article, so just be looking for that tomorrow. And so, the Toronto Blue Jays have offense coming out of their eyeballs. And one of the guys that is also going to be in my article is Santiago Espinal.
Espinal, yeah.
Espinal. Okay. When it comes to some of these names, I'm not that great. But he's only he's got 10% owned. And he plays third and second base. He has hits in 4 of his last 5 games. He's hitting in one of the great lineups that exist in the American League. And so one of the early lessons that I learned when I'm writing articles, if they're available in 78% of leagues, they're not available in anybody I'm writing to. All right. So I don't get into, Max Kepler is not available in league. Okay. So I didn't talk about him. But Santiago is, in fact, available, and hitting in that lineup, I think he can do a lot of helping of teams. And let's see, who else do I have here? How about a first baseman? Because we talked about how first base falls off the cliff when we did our rankings earlier on in the season. How about Daniel Vogelbach of the Pittsburgh Pirates? Unfortunately, you bring up these guys and then you look, he went hitless today. Yeah. But he's hitting 311 on the season. He's got 3 homers, 8 RBIs. He's scored 10 runs. And the Pirates, their offense isn't all that bad. And so, I think that he's a good – but in the last week, he's had 2 hits in 2 different games. So if you're needing help at first base, he's a guy I would go look at. And so those are some of the guys that I would put out there. How about some pitchers, Vince? What
Yeah,
throwing off the mound? What do we got for us here on that?
I can't go through an episode without talking about a Brewers player, right? Eric Lauer, back into the pitching
Now,
rotation.
this guy. So, because I wrote about another pitcher, Adrian Hauser,
Mm-hmm.
and he's owned in 10% of leagues. I don't know if you've got the statistics on Lauer or not.
Do not have it in front of me.
Okay.
Too busy trying to make trades.
Adrian Hauser is owned in 10% of leagues. So, and he scored 25 fantasy points the other day against the Cubs.
Eric
so
Lauer,
pitching, go get him.
Eric Lauer's owned in 55% of leagues. He had a 45% uptick in claims here this week. He's owned in our league by Nate Nguyen. But, Lauer and Hauser, again, back into the rotation. They're doing a 6-man rotation right now, so you got to play that into your pitching week. They go a little longer in between starts, but they're pitching incredible. Last year, it was Freddie Peralta. He's had a rough start to the year, but especially fantasy-wise. But this year, Lauer and Hauser really pitching well. And if you got guys on the injured list, you're looking for someone to fill the need right now, those are guys that can do it. But you got to keep an eye on them because, again, there's a reason why they're on the back end of the rotation. So you got to keep an eye out for it and see what happens. But I'll tell you, what Milwaukee's done with pitchers these last 3-4 years has been absolutely incredible. And they've done a great job with them. The other guy I've got is Dane Dooning.
He pitched very well yesterday against the Braves.
He's had a good start to the season as well. And he's a guy that's available, and he's only owned in 3.1% of leagues. And he's had the last 2 outings have been pretty good outings. So he's only had 1 bad outing, and that was against Seattle on 4/20. It was probably high. So you take that out, and you get the rest of the games. He's actually done pretty decent this year. So he's got an opportunity there. Again, a guy who's owned in very few leagues, especially if you're in a deep league. If you got like a 12-man league, that's the kind of guy you're looking for.
All right. So, Dan, a name I want to throw at you, and he's pitching today for your Phillies, Zach Eflin. Tell us about him.
Yeah, he's a guy that really struggled when Gabe Kapler was the manager, because Gabe Kapler, was obsessed with high fastballs, and because that's the new thing that everyone wants to do, throw high fastballs. And Zach Eflin doesn't have a great 4-seam fastball. So he went back to his sinker, and it's really helped him. But he's a solid pitcher. That's what he is. He's a good number 4. And on his day, he can go 7 1/3 shutout and get you a great outing. But he's also liable to do what he did against the Marlins a couple weeks ago, 4 innings, 4 earned, take a loss. So he's a guy that's probably best left on waivers, but if he's starting against a team maybe like Colorado or a team like Oakland, maybe look to pick him up and he's kind of one of those swing guys that kind of belongs on rosters, but probably shouldn't be taking up a roster spot when he's not starting.
How about because he's pitching once again next Saturday against the Mets? Would you pick him up for that start?
I'll leave him on the waiver wire for that. The Mets, the way the Mets are hitting, I'm fine leaving him on the waiver wire for that one. He's doing not too bad now. He's through 5, I believe, 3 earned. So it's not terrible, but not something you really are proud of if you picked him up.
Okay, so Dan, who name us a pitcher that you have that you would target to go get on waiver?
So I've got a couple relievers that I've been looking at just about all week. One of them is Michael King, Yankees reliever. Mm-hmm. He has unbelievable stuff. He's got 2 holds, a save, and a win on the season. 2 wins on the season, excuse me. And he's got an 0.69 ERA while doing it. So he's a guy, he comes in, works multiple innings most of the time, which gives him even more value when he is coming in. last week against the Guardians, 3 innings pitched, 8 strikeouts. That's a healthy outing right there for a reliever. Only owned in 29.7% of leagues, and that's up 19% this past week. So it probably should be going up even more, especially if the Yankees continue with their hot start. The other one's David Bednar. Relievers on bad teams are a very fickle investment sometimes.
Yeah.
Obviously, you want the closer because they have to win games, and someone has to close them. David Bednar has 2 saves and 4 holds, so he's not. The Pirates don't really have an established closer, but I think Bednar is probably the closest thing to it, and his ERA is under 1 this year. So if you're looking for a cheap source of saves, David Bednar is probably a good guy to get. And another one that I actually picked up for this week is Jorge Lopez. He's the Orioles closer, former starter, and he's had an amazing start to the year. Again, I don't think he's pitched in 5 days. So it's one of those things where you never know how much they're going to pitch, but when they do get their opportunity, he's been doing very well with it. But Jorge Lopez is another guy. I believe he's owned in 25% of leagues, and I might be highballing it there. But another guy with really good first month of the year in a new role out of the bullpen.
Well, one guy that I would like to mention and who's not available in our league, and that's Miles Mikolas of the St. Louis Cardinals. His percentage has gone up 37.9% to 62%. So if you're watching this show and he's available in your league, go get him immediately. He's pitched 7 innings or more in his last 2 starts. This guy is excellent. 1.52 ERA, 0.84 WHIP. Go get him if he's on your waiver wire, which he may not be anymore. But check him out. Guy that I'm looking at is Cole Irvin of Oakland. And unfortunately for him, he faces the Twins this week. But he shut down Cleveland, gave up just 1 run on 6 hits. And so he's only in 15.7% of leagues. And so he's a guy that you could pick up. And so those are the guys that I'm looking at. Vince, anybody that you have that this guy has just stunk up, the joint, but somebody that you're just, I'm not going to drop him. Because we talked about this a little bit last week.
Yeah.
Players that are stinking up, but you're going to hold them for dear life.
Yeah, just look at my roster. It's pretty much the whole offensive side of my roster is that way. Whit Merrifield, he's such a very, very slow start this year. Obviously, I'm not going to drop him. Ketel Marte finally looks like maybe he's coming around. Slow start. The guys on my roster as a whole, I really like. I got Enrique Hernandez from Boston. I like his versatility. He's scoring okay. It seems like every time I look at him, he's had this horrible game, and then I look at his point totals, and I'm like, well, he's still holding on, so I can't get rid of him. Gotta hold on to him a little bit longer as well. But honestly, right now as a whole, I'm very happy. Like I said, I just dropped Franmil Reyes and put him back on the waiver wire. So that's probably the one guy that I've been the most disappointed in. I'm really disappointed in myself. I have a Cub on my team. That's rare for me. So you getting Hap, but I mean, dude's crushing. So what are you supposed to do?
He's had a great start to the year.
He had a great start. Then I picked him up. Then he slumped, and I dropped him. And of course, then he went over to you, Vince, and now he's doing good. So.
Yeah, I treat him better than you do, Kev.
Okay,
but no, for me, I got a pretty good rotation of pitchers going right now. I got Michael Lorenzen on the roster. I had Cole Irvin on the roster. So I've kind of rotated through some pitchers pretty regularly here to start the season. But I'm trying. I just need to get healthy, man. I got so many guys injured. I've got 2 guys on the injured list. Hey, hear about this one. Hey, get your advice on this one, guys. Adley Rutschman, I still got him on my team. I drafted him. He's still there. Rootsman, whatever. I forget how you pronounce his name. But I don't want to let him go because I don't have a great catcher. I've got Zach Collins at Toronto, and by the way, I'm really happy with Zach Collins. He's owned by nobody, 8.4% of leagues. He's not the best out there, but he's definitely not the worst either. That being said, I'm kind of still holding out hope that Baltimore will get Adley healthy and call him up, and he'll take off and be just nuts. Am I crazy to hold on to him?
You're crazy to draft him, Vince, and you're crazy to hold on to him. Go ahead, Dan.
I think we know how I feel about Adley Rutschman. I'd probably be
You
another
had him
guy
high
that's
on your list. I
holding on
remember
to
that.
him longer than I should be. But I mean, right now he definitely wouldn't be able to stick on my bench with the amount of guys I have on the injured list. But if you've got the bench spot for him, I don't think it's the
Which
worst
doesn't
hold
sound
in
like
the
that's
world.
the case, right, Vince?
Well, yeah, at this point, I don't have any bench spots except for one. I have one bench spot. Everything else is maintained by injured list guys. So that's where I sit.
Yeah, you talk about catchers, Vince. I got Elias Diaz as my catcher from the Rockies. And he's top 10. He's hitting 263. Has hits in 3 out of 4. So
But
I'm pretty
Kevin,
happy with him.
you picked up Keeper Ruiz, right? After I dropped him. I dropped Ruiz to pick up Zach Collins. I saw you picked him up, and then I saw recently he was back on the waiver wire again. That's a disappointment player for you, by the way, Ruiz.
Right.
Man,
Yeah,
he's done
absolutely.
nothing this year.
Absolutely. So, Dan, who is a player on your team that you're holding on to, even though, he's been stuck in the bathroom for about an hour?
Well, the first one has got to be Marcus Simeon.
Oh, that's a rough
157
gig.
this
That's
year.
rough, yeah.
No home runs. I knew he wasn't playing well. I didn't know he was playing quite this poorly. So that one's not. This one's a little crazier than I was expecting. The other one's Bobby Witt Jr.
Oh, yeah. Ever since first opening day, it's been downhill straight for him.
He's actually got a 9-game hitting streak going.
Really?
He only has 1 hit in 7 of those games, and they're 2 doubles. He's no home runs this year. He doesn't walk a lot. He strikes out probably a little more than you'd like. So he's had a rough start to his major league career, but knowing what he can do, and again, I've got a lot of guys on the injured list, and there's not I don't want to. I almost dropped him for Isaiah Kiner-Falefa earlier this week, but that seems wrong. It's like something inside me didn't let me drop a guy like Bobby Witt for Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, because I know Bobby Witt will just go on a tear on someone else's team and go on and walk to a Rookie of the Year, and I'll be upset I dropped him. So I'm holding on to Bobby Witt Jr. for now, but it's not the easiest hold right now.
Yep, I definitely get you on that one. And a couple guys on my list that I'm holding on to, because we talked about the Twins. I've got Jorge Polanco. He's only hitting 181 right now, but he's owned in 94% of leagues. I drop him. He'll be on somebody's roster 2 days later. And he's qualified at second short, so I pretty much have to hang on to him until the cows come home. So just hope he had 2 hits today, so maybe he's turning that around. And the other guy that I have and I believe you warned me about him, Vince, and that's Kyle Tucker. He has definitely turned it around because he's had 2 or more hits in 3 of his the last 3 games, but that's only raised him up to 224. So that just goes to show you how terrible he's been up until the last couple of games.
And the team's been bad, right? So I mean, it'll come out eventually, but yeah, I wasn't high on Tucker.
Yeah, so when I look at his stats right now, like I said, he's had 2 or more hits in 3 straight games. So maybe he's straightened that out a little bit. So before we say goodnight, Vince, I just wanted to mention it was you and your dad going toe to toe this week in our fantasy league. So I'm just wondering what kind of trash talk was going on between the 2 of you.
Well, I was beating them all week. And I've been smart enough. I've learned over my fantasy career, don't trash talk till it's over. I'm glad I didn't because he surpassed me today, took the lead. He's going to beat me this week. So, and I'm nice to him. He's relatively nice to me until he's not, right? So this week's been very tame. It's early in the year. If it was the playoffs, it'd be a whole different story. But early in the year, we'll just take our lumps and move forward.
Okay, so as I was saying before we came on the air, I'm playing him this week. So any secrets you can hand me to taking him off?
He's a strategist. Is that the right word for it? He plays the rules.
Yeah.
He knows the rules and plays the rules. So you got to keep an eye out. He makes the moves when it's the right time, and he loves the strategy of fantasy sports.
All right. So unfortunately, we're coming close, to the close of our episode today. So Dan, let us know where you are out there and how we can get a hold of you.
Well, you can find me as always at DanDemico14 on Twitter. This week, it will probably be a lot of me complaining about Jordan Addison with his recent transfer to USC.
Okay.
I hope the NCAA realizes how slippery of a slope that they're on right now. If that transfer is allowed to go through and USC doesn't face any punishments, I know we're leaving baseball a little bit, but
okay,
that's a real thing. That's a real thing for Pitt. Twitter is not very pleased with how this past weekend is going. So I have a feeling that my displeasure will be voiced fairly soon on Twitter. But as always, follow Belly Up Baseball on Twitter, and we got a lot of good stuff coming out every week. And I hope you can take a look at it.
All right, so get over there and follow Dan on Twitter. There's lots of stuff going on over there. And we always know, Vince, that you've got lots and lots of stuff going on. So let us know what you got going on this week.
All right, I'll try to make it quick. At Sports Stove, Twitter and Instagram. Sports Stove Podcast, episodes drop Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. NLFA football. Myself and the man, the myth, the legend, Jason Cooper will be calling this game Monday night live on Belly Up TV, 8:30. Tune in for that as well. And I've got my pen back out. I've been writing a couple articles this week. I got some football articles. Sorry, Dan, no baseball articles yet. I'll get one of those out. But my most recent article is "Are the Days of Reaching for QBs Over?" Talking about the NFL draft.
Definitely get over there and check out Vince on that article. And
BellyUpSports.com is where you can find that at. So I'm always around.
So would you say, and I read the article, of course, but the answer to that question is yes. What you say, Vince?
I don't know. I leave it at the end, not sure. Next year, they could revert right back to reaching for quarterbacks.
It depends on the team.
Yeah, there's good quarterbacks next year, but I was really impressed that they decided to hold off to the third round to go for quarterbacks for the most part. I was very impressed by the NFL containing themselves.
Well, you were live Friday night, and I came on shortly after you did, and I was very pleased that the Seahawks avoided taking a quarterback. So,
let's see if you're saying that when Drew Lock leading the 0-7 Seahawks later this season.
well, we've got a lot of time to get into that, but so you can always find me at Kevin62 WILSEA, and as I mentioned earlier, there's an article that'll be dropped tomorrow about players that we talked about picking up. There's a lot more players I get into on that article. You'll definitely want to check that out. And just Belly Up Sports in general. Get out there. People are writing stuff. They're producing stuff. And there's a lot going on. So definitely check that out. And so, guys, I appreciate you guys coming on here. And, we'll see you on the flip side.
On the flippity flip.
All right. You guys have yourself a great week.